This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stellas. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is presented by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. What's Working is a show designed to bring you workplace, workforce, and marketplace trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around you. We try to find the guests that when we interview them, something they say will make you a little bit better at whatever it is that you do. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Stephen Cope about his book, The Great Work of Your Life. My buddy Tom Miller, a Mobilian now living in Denver, heard that interview and wrote me about his buddy named Stephen Fitzgerald. Stephen's business, Tom told me, is an Ethos. Whoa, that piqued my interest. What does that mean? And I had to find out, and we will when we come back from break. Before break, want to plant in your head Sandifer Wealth Management, the professionals there that can help you take your retirement nest egg and make it extended a little bit longer as is needed. If you wonder what your retirement's going to look like and you've been preparing for it and don't know exactly what to do to finish it off, find the professionals at Sandifer Wealth Management. Sandifer Wealth Management online. What's Working is presented by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. We'll be back with Stephen Fitzgerald.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Now offering the purchase of the Stella Artois Chalice, a beautiful stemmed glass with the Stella logo. The purchase of each Stella Artois Chalice provides 5 years of clean water for someone in one of 13 developing countries around the world. Learn more at stellaartois.com. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working, presented by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the University of Alabama. I'm Cam Marston. I'm on the line with Stephen Fitzgerald. He's the president. He's the owner. He's the bottle washer, I guess, of Rodeo Labs, which is a bike manufacturer based in Denver, Colorado. And before I give you the explanation of why I'm featuring a bike manufacturer in Denver, Colorado for a radio show in Mobile, Alabama, which we'll get into this. I first want to welcome Stephen to the show. Stephen, thank you for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Well, thank you, Cam, for having me on. Much appreciated. And yeah, love invitations to talk about what we're doing at Rodeo Labs.
Let's talk about what it is that you do. So from a 50,000 foot, what is Rodeo Labs? What do you do? And why does it not have the word bike in it? The company name not have the word bike or bicycle in it?
Well, yeah, we are a sort of, I guess, mid to high end custom bike manufacturer in Denver, Colorado. And we offer a highly customized purchasing and building experience. So everyone who engages us and walks away with a bike will have had a lot of interaction and relationship with us, sort of creating this bike of their dreams that they want. And we do not have bike in our name anywhere because Rodeo did not start out as a bike company. Our full name is actually Rodeo Adventure Labs. That's our legal name. And Rodeo started as an experiment in bike riding, and eventually through inertia sort of was funneled almost by fate, I guess, into becoming a bike brand. But we don't only see ourselves as a product brand. we try to have that as a part of what we do, but we want to be more than just that.
And I think that's where the connection came between the two of us. So let me tell you my version of the story of how you landed in front of me. You and I share a mutual friend in Tom Miller. He was born and raised here in Mobile. He and I were friends for a long time growing up and have reconnected. And when he heard the broadcast that we did with Stephen Cope on the great work of your life, talking about finding your dharma and your true purpose, Tom reached out to me and said, I found the guy that's done that. And his email to me reads the following. And Stephen, I'll ask you to comment on this in just one moment. Stephen called, this is Tom's email to me introducing Stephen as a potential guest for the show. It reads this: Stephen called in Audible about 7 years back, built a bike company from scratch when everyone I know, including myself, thought he was insane. The bike company Stephen built is called Rodeo Adventure Labs, but Rodeo is so much more than a bike company. It's an ethos. It's a lifestyle. It's a community of wonderful folks who love to build and ride bikes in all types of conditions through terrain that many would consider unrideable in locations all over the world. Stephen, what do you think about what Tom wrote to me about you?
Well, that was a very kind summary that he wrote, but it also makes my day, because if Tom is willing to say that about us, then it means we're doing something right. I think he summed it up pretty well. I did call an audible and sort of jumped into what this is and has become unexpectedly, and I do think it was and is a little bit insane. I mean, it's a bit of an out of body experience to sometimes say, what is it exactly am I doing with my life? How did a company begin? How is it that I have employees and customers and all of this sales and revenue? It's very, it feels like somebody else's life a little bit. It's just a really fun roller coaster to be on. And it does have downs and ups. So yeah, I think he was kind, but pretty accurate by the facts.
So tell me what you were doing 8 years ago before the Audible.
I've always worked in a career that's involved design. And in the beginning, it was fairly traditional graphic design in the sort of a fashion, apparel, sportswear industry for a lot of brands that people would know and recognize. And then as technology marched forward and the internet gained prominence, I moved over into that a bit and then jumped out of that into television, where I stayed for, I don't know, maybe a decade in entertainment. And I was designing and sort of working on identity for television network launches and rebrands and commercial advertising campaigns, things like that. But anything where brands would sort of come and say, this is a message that we want to give to our consumer. This is an identity that we want to create for a brand that we're going to launch. And I get to do that visually. We have the companies that I worked at either or also alone when I sort of went out on my own. So it's always been about, I guess, brand stories and brand identity.
So what I'm listening for is the logical step between what you were doing 8 years ago and beyond and what you're doing now. Now, one of the logical steps is once you decided on Rodeo Labs, you had the skill set to promote it and make it a brand. But I don't hear anything about engineering. I don't hear anything about material sciences. I don't hear anything about, you've got graphic design and perhaps beyond that, but no design in making a bike. What made you think you could do this? Now, before I continue, Stephen, I want you to know who our listener is. And I want you to know who's leaning forward going, my goodness, I would love to punt on the past 10 years of my life and start something new. And it's rare to find somebody that's actually done that. And that's why I wanted you on this show. So what made you think, after this background in design, that you could become a custom bike manufacturer?
Well, I did not know that about myself, that it was possible. And I did not have that charted. I do know that I had the very present desire to make things that weren't as transient or even disposable as sort of commercial, advertising and brand experiences can be. You can pour months into a single commercial or launch, and it's only relevant for a week or a month. And then the work that you really put a lot of yourself into is gone kind of forever, no matter how proud you are of it. Nobody just flips through old commercials or designs and says, wow, that was great. That was art. So even though that was a really great career working with really cool people, and you couldn't help but think, what have I actually really made? So when I left working for other companies, for a while, I sort of experimented designing my own products and furniture, just really trying hard can I make something that's sort of physical instead of digital? And I didn't really have a breakthrough there. I started and hit walls and got discouraged, and then retreated back into what pays the bills, right, and what people know me for. And that's okay. But, through a lot of conversations with really kind of a mentor that I have here in Denver, I started keying in on the idea that, I was in my 30s, and this started coming up in the mid 30s of like, I'm doing this right now, and I can just look at my peers to know exactly what the career trajectory I'm on is going to look like. I'm gonna be a designer, and then maybe a director or a creative director, and then maybe I'll rise to prominence and run an ad agency or a branding or an effects house or whatever it would be. And that'll kind of be where the skill set takes me. And I knew that wasn't going to be satisfying. So the radar was up, and I knew that somewhere between now and 10 years from now, I hope I'm still not doing what I'm doing right now, because while I am happy doing it at 35, I absolutely could not still be doing exactly this at 45, or I will have been static. The life just won't have continued to bloom. It would be stagnant. And that's kind of unlivable to think about. It's not a judgment on people that take that path, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about material science. I'm not an engineer. All I will say, I have since learned things about it, but through osmosis. I'm never going to be that guy. So Rodeo started as a cycling team, and it never had any intent into turning into a brand, but I had ideas that I needed for me to bring into existence about the kind of bike that I wanted to ride. And I kind of just went on a personal journey for myself on how can I create this bike that I want to ride by meeting people, networking, doing some internet research, etc., and bring those pieces together into this thing that I want. And I wasn't thinking about it as a product. I was only thinking about it as, I'm a little bored with the way that I currently ride a bike, and I'm challenged and intrigued by some other ideas, but I need this bike to exist in order to be able to do that. And that's where Rodeo started. It was a non-commercial creative endeavor. It was a project between friends of just riding bikes together, which is where Tom came in. Really put up a website, design a logo, write our core values about what it means to just ride bikes with friends instead of trying to impress other people. He was attracted to that. And so were a lot of people around the world, really. And they gave us a shot in the arm of momentum in terms of building a community. But what you do learn as maybe a designer or somebody who works in a team, a creative industry, is that you're leveraging everybody else's skill sets around you. Yeah, I don't single-handedly make really almost any end product in that previous career. It would take teams of 5 to 100 people to create the finished product, and there are specialists involved, and you really can't be a ninja at 50 different things. So you have to focus on what you're good at and invite other people into what your idea is, and then it can exist. So that might have been a unique skill that enabled me to kind of push through I don't have any idea what I'm doing part of this into, now products exist that never existed. And isn't because I make them here in Denver myself. I don't. But I caused them to exist by being relentless about wanting them to, and then finding the people to surround myself that could do it with me. So it's a team effort.
When we come back from break, I want you to talk about these bikes and teach me about them as best as you can, considering our environment. And we're not standing together in a showroom with you pointing at it and explaining things to me. But I want to hear the language you use to describe the bikes and what you wanted and how it's manifest. So when we come back, pick one of these models that I see on your website and be prepared to tell me about it. How's that sound?
Sounds good. I'll give it a go.
Yeah, we'll take a break. We'll be right back after this. I'm on the line with Stephen Fitzgerald, Rodeo Labs, Denver, Colorado, bike manufacturer to the picky, the elite, the athlete. What's Working is presented by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. We'll be right back with more.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please pull forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, in Mobile at 666-1616.
I'm Cam Marston. You're listening to What's Working. We're back. What's Working is presented by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, better known as ACRE, at the University of Alabama. Stephen Fitzgerald is on the line with me from Denver, Colorado. He's the owner of Rodeo Labs, a manufacturer of high-end performance bikes. And Stephen, prior to the break, I said, I want to hear you talk about these bikes. And it's something that I enjoy doing. For example, going into art galleries and hearing people describe the art, the words they choose, the passion in their voice tells me a lot about that person, more so even about the art. And I'm going to hold myself to this again, and maybe this will happen right now. Pick one of these models of bikes that I see on your website and tell me about it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, every bike on our website is designed with the same intent. They differ in sort of price point and materials, but the bike we started with is called the Trail Donkey, which is a outrageous name for a bike. Not very aspirational, but I think it speaks to the origin of the bike because it again was my personal project, not a product idea. And what Rodeo Labs bikes are intended for is, I think, reinterpreting the way that we ride bikes. That I was a bike racer, and in some sense still am for many decades. And you would either race your bike on the road, or you would race your bike on the mountain bike, and there were a couple of other disciplines. And every bike is highly optimized for its purpose. It's like having a Formula One car or a NASCAR or any other type of or an off-road rally racing truck. You buy this single purpose vehicle to be optimized for any given discipline. Well, and what rodeo was about, and still is, was we're really tired of those genres, those rigid genres that cycling has decided to put everybody into, and we're just going to start breaking the barriers down in between them, and any single ride could be a mix of every different type of riding for the sake of fun and variety and new routes, and even just the constraint of time. Living in the city of Denver and not really wanting to drive an hour to the mountain to ride my bike on the dirt, I would ride this bike to the mountain, then ride the mountain, and then ride home. And what kind of bike would be good for a bike built for whatever you encounter on the ride? You may not be the fastest, but it's capable of getting you there. And the experience that you'll have there will be uniquely creative in terms of, what am I going to encounter? What am I going to have to overcome? What things what unexpected experiences am I going to have on this bike? But the idea that I'm not even sure where I'm going to end up or what I'm going to encounter, but by the time I get home, I'm going to feel invigorated by the variety of what I experienced. That was me in 2014. And it's a type of riding that revolves around prioritizing just the fun of the experience and not really the the high-end athleticism and the sort of race car mentality that I think cycling and a lot of other sports talk about performance. And, it's about highly optimized performance. No, let's just set that on the shelf and talk about what if we're just trying to have fun and be with friends. So that was rodeo.
Have you created a Swiss Army bike?
Yeah, really. That's exactly what it is. And it's weird to talk about these bikes now and try and I don't want to beat the we're the most innovative or we're the most unique drum, because really the entire bike industry has now circled around this concept, and it's probably the biggest growth area in cycling. And people have put a label on it, gravel riding, but at the time it was still quite the wild, undefined, semi-crazy thing to do. Because it didn't really fit into anybody's ideas of what they should already be doing. So it's a Swiss Army bike, and you really have very diverse experiences on the bikes, and they can be built a lot of different ways depending on where you live and what you expect to encounter.
Do your owners have one bike, or is this one of many bikes?
Well, some people would call it sort of the quiver killer, and the quiver being 5 different tools for 5 different jobs,
right?
And if it's a quiver killer, it's talking about whittling it down to fewer or even one bike. And for me, it is that. It depends on the customer. Many customers will come to us and say, look, I don't need this bike to do it. I want one. I feel like I need it, but I already have 2 other bikes that are very good at that. So this one, I want to tune it towards a narrower gamut. And we're fine with that. We'll build that bike. We love that customer. And then for, I think, a lot of the people at the core of defining what the brand is about, including myself, we're constantly running that continuing experiment of really just how far can you push a single platform. So we'll talk about successes and failures. Like, we pushed it too far, and that was pretty intense. And, we went and did this thing on it, and we'll write about it. Maybe we'll make a film, or maybe we'll be able to do a podcast with somebody about it. And we'll talk about how, well, we did it and we made it, but maybe don't do that. Maybe we pushed too far. And I think that gives the brand credibility that I think people see that we're still very curious and enthusiastic about pushing the limits of the adventures that these bikes are taking on it. It proves the product, and it makes the story interesting.
So you're getting your customers actively involved regularly in feedback on the performance of the bike. You'll give them a custom-made bike for the thing that they want to do, and you're seeking their feedback for improvements all the time. They feel like they're a part of the process. Am I getting this right?
Yeah. So, I would say if we were breaking it down, rodeo still drives probably 80% of, the staff and the people here drive about 80% of what really the bike is or will become. But the feedback in the beginning, we didn't have customer feedback. We only just had a singular vision for where we wanted to go. But over time, more and more of these bikes are out there. You get, I guess, more super user type customers who are very engaged, and, they're still relational post-purchase. They don't just disappear. They want to stay in touch and let you know how it's going. And those people are constantly feeding us back ideas, things they like, things they want to see in future versions. And it absolutely gets rolled into sort of what's coming next. It's not just a transaction that ends at the point of delivery. Anyone who chooses to stay engaged with us, we really enjoy that part of it.
And I want to talk to you ask you about how you make that happen. I think many of our listeners would love to have that level of user or customer engagement with whatever that they do, whether it be manufacturing air conditioning systems or bikes or anything like that. But I'm wondering if the bike owner is a special kind. And I can recall a dinner that I sat across the table from a guy about 2 years ago, and I never thought it was possible to have a conversation as long as we did about tire pressure in his bikes. I didn't know there was that much content out there on that. And I think if you were to add every tire pressure conversation I've ever had with cars and bikes and everything else, it was only a tenth of what I went through that night with that guy. And I remember thinking, this needs to end real soon. But he's really passionate about his bikes and the various tire pressures and how he uses them, and when it's wet outside, when it's hot outside. Is he typical of your customer?
Yeah, our customer, yes. And I think, there's the person who walks into a bike shop and needs a bike and then they leave. and that's the end of it. They have a bike and they'll be back when it breaks. But that's, they just need to get somewhere, and they don't really care that much about what brand. They may have a budget in mind that they need to hit, and that's the transactional customer. And we do things in order to put our elbows out and avoid courting a highly transactional customer. Our customers, I really want them to be a little bit more relational. And the brand voice that we have, through a website, social media, email, even the phone conversations that we have, I think we have created the expectation with people that are riding our bikes that there are real people behind this company, and that the company has a personality, and that you're not just buying an appliance from a corporation. You're buying a passion thing from a bunch of people who love it as much as you. And when they have the expectation that they can get in touch with you and that you care what they think, then they'll be in touch. And I think if you treat them like a one-way door when they are delivered the product, then they won't be back, and you won't really kind of court that long-term relationship. So that's done with the voice of what we do. And I'm very involved in the voice of the company. I still, even though I'm a CEO or whatever, and so important, I need to be doing other things, I still run our social media, because I've found that I need to be engaged with telling the ongoing story of what we're doing. And I'm really, as the person who started it, really the only person who's in the position to keep telling it the way that it's been told, but I guess the authenticity that needs to be there. And that kind of engagement, when people come and see and read back and look at what we're posting and talking about and the style that we have of interaction, they adopt that, and they see it and they say, all right, I'm on board with this. And they bring that expectation to us when, they make first contact.
Have you modeled this after any other business that you've seen or experienced, this high engagement with the customer? Are you knocking off an idea that you saw somewhere, or is this all original?
There is no one in that regard that I'm knocking off. There are plenty of brands that I really admire, but this is not genius. This is just, is it luck or not luck? It happened to be, that's who I am, and I started it. And there are people who start, let's just say, cycling companies or cycling products, and they're more into, let's just say, the engineering or the let's build and exit this business side of the commerce side of the company. But I've always been driven by, I love the bike. I love the experiences. I love the relationships. So when I brought that into rodeo when it started, and I stay engaged with the way that we started and that tone, then it's just me in that regard. And rodeo is not a just me company. We have 8 employees, which is not a huge number, but to me it is. And a lot of customers. This is a group effort, and it's community. But in terms of setting the course for what the personality and the vision for the brand is, I'm still right at the center of that, and I honestly can't imagine ever really having much distance between me and that. And I'm always going to be on the story side, and then maybe that goes back to, that's really what my craft was before I started rodeo, was brand stories and identity. I care a lot about that. And that's just, so, I guess that would be the answer.
So I'm holding, real quick, we need to go to break, but I'm holding in my left hand a fishing lure that for some reason is on the desk in my office and has been here for a while. Do you think you could create the same customer experience if you were a manufacturer of fishing lures, or is it unique to the passion held by the biking community?
I think cycling is a passion industry, or at least the middle or high end of the market is. Fishing lures are also definitely, knowing a number of fly fishermen, I think they might even be more passionate than cyclists. But I don't think it has to be limited to that. I think you're not going to create a highly passionate air conditioner customer. It's just an appliance, but there are a huge number of products in the world that customers bring passion into the relationship with. And I think by being passionate about the product that you make, you will court and invite customers who care about it as much as you do into that world. So if the brand leads the charge, if the brand says, yeah, it may be that we make trailers for trucks, but we are out of our minds obsessed and excited about the details that go into these trailers, then you are going to find trailer people and they will join you there and be just as passionate as you are.
Let's go to break. This is fascinating. Let's go to break. I think you're onto something. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Stephen Fitzgerald is my guest, CEO of Rodeo Labs, bike manufacturer, Denver, Colorado. Stephen, when we get back, Tom Miller described your company as a living ethos, and I want to get your reaction to that. What's Working is presented by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. We'll be right back.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stellas. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Hey, this is Cam. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're really enjoying the podcast. Do me a favor and search for Cam Marston on your social media outlets and like us or follow us or whatever is the right thing to do. Also, if you know others who'd benefit from the podcast, please forward it on to them and encourage them to listen. If you're so inclined, we'd love your rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Those ratings matter. Finally, don't be a stranger. Email me with your comments, your feedback, your thoughts, your show ideas, whatever. Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com. I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you very much for listening. Now, back to the show. We're back. You're listening to What's Working, presented by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the University of Alabama. Stephen Fitzgerald is the CEO of Rodeo Labs. They make a high-end custom, Stephen, you called it a gravel bike. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. That's sort of the term most people have agreed on.
A gravel bike for a very discerning customer. And Stephen, prior to the break, Tom Miller, who introduced the two of us, described your company as an ethos, a way of living, a way of seeing, a way of being. Tell me how you feel about that. And I'm really curious if how much of the way your company has ended up today was a part of the plan or was a reaction to your customers. Go ahead.
I agree. I think Rodeo Labs is an ethos, and I think that that's why we are as successful as we are, why we're able to stand out in. It's a super crowded market. Cycling is, some say it's a zero-sum industry. So if you're selling a bike, that you just stole that customer from someone else who didn't sell a bike. It didn't experience huge growth. Now that may be changing. I haven't looked at the metrics recently, but it's an interesting challenge that there's a lot of noise there. And why would anyone care about your brand? And I think the reason that people care about Rodeo Labs is that they sense that, yes, we make bicycles, and that is sort of what allows us to exist on the commercial side. There's more depth to it than just moving units and slicing the salami. And, I don't know if it was let's just say year 2, I distilled down our ethos in just the 3 words: ride, explore, create. And I thought that's really exactly what this company is about. And that's when you have sort of your why or your purpose distilled down to very few words, you can definitely check back in with those words constantly and find out, or just check yourself. Do I really feel like we're staying true to this? And if you don't, your customers will call you out on it. They'll sense that you've drifted or they'll leave. And I think we've stayed true to that ethos, and we're even leaning into that ethos more and more over time, that it isn't sell bikes, sell bikes, sell bikes. It's we have to be riding them at the core of the company. There has to be authenticity in what we're making. And then the exploring is a geographic term, and it talks about, first it was just Colorado and the Rockies, but it's really become sort of a global thing of really looking at blank places on the map, both literally and conceptually, and saying, I don't know why nobody goes there. I don't know why does nobody talk about that place, but it looks really interesting. Let's go exploring. And that could be a country. I just got back from Armenia, or it could be an idea about a product that nobody's doing. And we have to be exploratory with our imagination on, just because no one's doing it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Let's go there. And then the create part at the end is keep your imagination engaged and be relentless about we are creative people. And if we do not just want to be consumers, there are many, many, many great cycling products and bikes out there on the market, but our purpose for existing is that we want to create new ones. We don't want to just consume from the available offerings. So at our DNA level, we always have to be kind of invigorating what we make with fresh ideas and hopefully innovation. So that's our ethos as a brand. And I forget the second part of the question there.
Second part of the question, and two-part questions are always unfair, and I'm very good at asking them, but they're always unfair. The second part was how much of the ethos was a reaction to customer interest, customer demands, where you read the customer's interest, read their mind essentially, and said, this is where I think the company needs to go. It sounds like the ethos was your brainchild and the customers found it.
Yeah, I don't want to sound arrogant and say that the customer, is not inspiring, because they have constantly inspired us to evolve and do things better. But the ethos, that's innate. First maybe with me as I was sort of leading the charge alone for a number of years. But then as we've joined or gained employees, the people that we bring on board, I hope they're an embodiment of that. And I look for that type of person. So I think rodeo puts that into the world, and then people who are in alignment with that, they say, wait, that's me too. That's what I want to be. And then they engage the brand, or, not everyone in our community owns, a bunch of rodeo stuff. There are people who we simply ride with, but that's okay as well. So we have people who are part of rodeo as customers, and there are people who just say, look, I'm riding something else, but I really love what you're about, and I love following along. And, then maybe they'll contribute a story, or maybe they'll just be, affirmation, give us affirmation that, you guys are on the right track, and what you're doing as a company means something to me. So that can be as meaningful as $1 or $1,000, so yeah, it is a community. Let's
go back to this transformation of 8 years ago, 7 years ago to today. And as you were stepping away from the traditional career, which had done you well, into something else, you mentioned a couple times that you were the only one. It didn't happen. You were the single employee of Rodeo Labs for a while. The transition into what you're doing today was not it did not explode on top of you, and you knew exactly that it was going to work, that it was a process. And then even then you had to dip back into your traditional work from time to time. A friend of mine studies artists, and he studies the creative process. And what he's fed back to me is that many of these artists have a similar, they say it differently, but essentially it gets messy before it gets good. I'm sensing that in your transition from the old you to the new you, it was messy before it got good. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was absolutely horrifying for a certain amount of time. before we turned into a commercial venture, we had 9 months of we're just doing this for fun. I'm just organizing a team. We're selling, I guess, some jerseys and whatnot to people around the world. It doesn't add up to very much, but the noise level kept increasing around rodeo and the amount of time I was putting into it. And then I did a very measured pause where I said, it seems like I've created a brand, and it seems like people even want to buy things from this brand, things that I've shown them that I won't sell them. Is this the point wherein I pivot away from my career? Because I can't have this both. I can't keep doing my day job. I'm actually already sabotaging my day job with the amount of time I'm putting into this passion project. But you need to stop at some point and say, am I really going to run with this, or do I need to dial it back and stay where it's safe? And I have 3 kids, a house, I'm married, and I had to have some pretty honest conversations with my wife about, should we put all this at risk so that I can chase what is ultimately a passion in a very fickle and sort of dangerous industry in terms of you could just lose it all. And then I talked to friends who I respect, and then I even hired a consultant. And I said, let's just plug in imaginary numbers to find out if there's anything at the other end of, what if we sold 100 bikes?
Right.
Is there anything at the end of that, or is this just a colossal waste of time? And the feedback I got was, especially, I was in my later 30s at that point, was this has a lot of promise. There's something that feels somewhat magical about where it already is. And you clearly want to do it. And if you don't do it, you will always regret the fact that you had an opportunity to try and you never had the courage to go for it. So there was a very, very measured moment where I said, fine, I'm going for it. And I still held on to the career for a long time. And in my mind, I thought, well, I'm just going to elegantly taper between the two. The day job's going to slowly wind down, and then the revenue from the new thing is slowly going to wind up. And they'll hand off somewhere in the middle. But what it really looked like was a slow taper off of the old thing, and then a precipitous drop to nothing, then a long period of really no meaningful revenue or net profit before, I would say, 3 years in, there came a very important moment where I finally wrote myself my first real paycheck from rodeo. So there was a 3-year period of a lot of doubt and a lot of risk. And, I had mortgaged my house. So that was my runway for the company, was I am allowed to spend this much of this sort of HELOC. And when we hit this number, there are no more draws, and I've got to retreat back to safe cover in the old career. And right as I was hitting that number, within thousands to $3,000 of this sort of terminal exit, was the moment where, I made this decision that I think it's time to write myself a check. And that was a really big step into the unknown, because I didn't know if the company could write me that check every month,
right,
and sort of start paying my bills. But I just thought, if I don't write this check today, and I have a friend and investor, Glenn, and he said, if you don't write yourself this check today, there won't be a Rodeo Labs next month. So we're just going to write it, and then we'll deal with next month when it gets here. And then, that was 2017, maybe. And it has continued. We're still here, and we've grown. So there's a lot of unknown, about starting something new. And you have to be very stubborn. I think you have to believe in the potential of what you're doing. And probably, since the money doesn't really start coming back to you for initially, unless you get very lucky, you probably have to love it above all else. You have to be wanting to pour yourself into this thing just because you love it for a long time before it really starts loving you back in any way.
It's a great story. It did get messy before it got good. It sounded like it not only got messy, it got scary, it got worrisome.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of a lot of people's stories of transitions like what you've gone to. And they will say in almost a cast aside comment, and it was tough for a little while. Well, it was tough for 3 years for you. And there was probably wakeful nights, and your wife was saying, I think you're fantastic, but maybe this is the right decision or whatever. That messy part, all people tend to gloss over. the anxiety that is underneath that. They look at the success that you're having today and think that messy part didn't last very long. I can tell it was tough. And I know people going through that. And I know people listening right now saying, I'd kind of like to do something like that. The tough parts are tough, folks. The easy parts are wonderful, but the tough parts are tough. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting to me, and I think about this a lot now, is that this has never become less risky or less financially dangerous. At every stage that the company grows, yes, we get bigger and yes, revenues go up, but the risk goes up. I never imagined having 7 employees. One just bought a house, many just bought a car, one just got married, has a baby on the way. And the risk now is not just to me.
Yes.
The risk is that I am the stopgap for 7 other people's lives, including the 8th would be my own family. So, maybe it isn't all dark night of the soul for those first 3 years, what those first 3 years were, where, maybe where I'm going to ruin my family. And it continues to be that, but I think you get used to the sensations of, yeah, there's nobody here to catch me. This really could fall apart. A disaster, an economic disaster, a supply chain disaster, any number of things could really torpedo this at any moment. But instead of getting fixated on that danger and just staring at it all the time and going, we could die at any moment, you just get used to the sense that this is life. This is what it takes to build something and to run something, is that it's you or the void. So keep leaning forward and don't get pushed back on your heels So this is just the way life is now. And that's okay. That's fine with me. But it was very unnerving, especially coming away from, a known quantity, a previous career. I know the clients are going to keep coming as long as I keep doing good work. It was very comfortable and set. And it isn't that anymore. And it never will be again, because the minute we get comfortable, is it time to buy a building? Is it time to invest in new tooling? What about the new product line that we want to bring on next year? Well, okay, what is that inventory going to cost? And is that money coming internally, or are we going to get outside? Are we going to get a loan or an investor or an equity partner? The risk just really keeps increasing, I think, forever.
There's no end in sight. Stephen, we're running up on the close of the show. Tell people how they can find you. If there's a biker out there who's very interested in what you've said and wants to be a part of this ethos, where can they find you?
Our website is our name is Rodeo Labs. And then in our website, there's a hyphen between that. So rodeo-labs.com. And then we're very active on Instagram. That's where we really started telling our story. So, and then on Instagram, we're just at Rodeo Labs, one word. And that if you stop in there and spend a little bit of time, we have, a very active Instagram with quite a bit of, you'll get familiar with our story. And then our website has a very long journal going back to 2014 that would really tell in more long form where we've been and what we're doing and why.
Stephen, I think my listeners would love the type of engagement you have with your customers. And it's wonderful to hear you tell the story as well as the risks that you took to get there. And I'm glad that Tom has introduced the two of us. Your story is perfect for this show. Thank you so much for your willingness to share.
Well, thank you, Cam. This was, it was a lot of fun. I love retelling because it brings me back and makes me think about where we're at and then where should we keep going? What should we go next? So it's always a pleasure.
Stephen Fitzgerald is the owner of Rodeo Labs, Denver, Colorado. I'll be back in a moment with final comments. You're listening to What's Working.
When you make the right decision, it feels good, like picking the perfect accent rug or choosing a good night's sleep over an all-night crime show binge. It feels really good to make the right insurance decision, too. I'm State Farm Agent Allison Horner, and that's why I'm right here in Mobile to help you select the right protection at the right price. I'll make sure you understand your State Farm coverages so you'll know what to expect if the unexpected happens. With me as your State Farm agent, it's easy to make the right choice. You can come by, call, or click AllisonHorner.com. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working, presented by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the University of Alabama. Going to wrap it up quickly this week, folks. Stephen, grateful for your time. Appreciate your willingness to do the interview. A bike manufacturer in Denver. Not sure what reaction you'll get from an audience in Alabama. I hope something comes your way. We're grateful for the amount of time you were able to spend. The show's producer is John Thompson with Eye on Digital. Reach out if you're looking for a podcast or any sort of production work. John's the best that I know in my business, and I use him in multiple different ways. Find us on social media. Reach out to me personally, Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com, and let us know what you think. Have a good week, everybody.